Hello, welcome to Ray-ality TV. I'm Raymond Bakari. Today I'm joined by Providence Ward 1 City Councilman John Goncalves. The ward contains the neighborhoods of Fox Point, Wayland Square, College Hill, the Jewelry District, and downtown Providence. Councilman Goncalves, how are you today?
Very good. Thank you for having me, Raymond.
It's good to have you on. You're currently Ward 1 City Councilman after winning the 2020 special election back in March 2020. Just to clarify for those watching, are you running for re-election in 2022?
I have every intention to run for re-election in 2022.
And speaking of 2022, most of the campaigning for city council seats is about listening to residents, either through community events, town halls, or just knocking on doors. What are some of the key issues you're hearing from residents in your ward that they want you to focus on?
Thank you, Raymond. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on your show, and I commend you and all the students at RIC for staying engaged and informed. Look, I love Providence. I believe in Providence. I think the city has enormous potential. We just need to realize that potential. So when it comes to the work that we plan to focus on, there are a number of things. Education is number one. I think all across our ward and all across the city, that's a huge issue that we constantly hear about on the doors. As a lifelong resident of Providence and also a Providence Public School alumnus and an educator myself, I'm deeply passionate about education and believe that every child, regardless of their zip code, deserves a high quality education that prepares them for the 21st century. As we know from the John Hopkins report, we have a deep and serious need in our school system. And despite the takeover, I think the council shouldn't abdicate its responsibility to our schools, but also play a very, very important role in education, considering we fund our public schools. And it's what our families, children, and teachers deserve. They deserve accountability. They deserve the school improvements that they've been pushing for, and that will ultimately help our children succeed and move us in the right direction. The next issue I would say is improving quality of life and improving our economy. Improving quality of life in our economy also include things like housing affordability. This is an issue that we hear about all across the city. And then we also hear about how things just aren't working in the city. And this is something that we need to address moving forward. We need a more effective and efficient government for taxpayers. And that means eliminating complacency and mandating efficiency on things like potholes and sidewalks and street sweeping and trash collection, snow removal, or getting rid of things like graffiti. And it's the basic functions of government, and they're quite simple. We just need to keep our streets clean and keep our streets safe. And we certainly can deliver on this, but it's going to require us working incredibly hard to improve the quality of life of all of our residents. And that's going to also encourage more investment, which will grow our economy and make us the world-class city that I know we can be. Lastly, I would say is the environment. This is incredibly important all across our world, but particularly in our city. We are dealing with the climate crisis, just like other municipalities across the country. And so we really need to address climate change. And there's a lot that we can do on the local level. And I hope that we continue to usher forth great policies that ensure that we're addressing our climate locally. So in a nutshell, I would say education, improving the economy and quality of life, and very importantly, addressing climate change.
Starting off with that first issue you mentioned, which is the issue of education. Let's dive into charter schools because the role that they should have in the city is a highly debated issue in Providence politics. I know you're a teacher yourself, like you had mentioned. You teach at the Wheeler School, which is a private school that goes from pre-K to 12th grade in the east side of Providence. As an educator yourself, what role do you think charter schools should have in the city?
Well, Ray, thanks for this question. Public, private, charter are all options that families should have access to. So I'm pro school choice, and I defer to families about what options work best for them, their children, and their families. The government shouldn't decide what's right for families. However, I am anti siphoning off funds from our public schools. We can't afford to divest in our public school system. And if anything, our public schools need more investment. Our families, our children, our teachers in public schools need all the support financially from the city, and that's our obligation to taxpayers. As the city thinks about what we do moving forward, one of the important things that I'm going to be pressing the city administration on, and also my council colleagues on, is making sure that we're giving the school system all the resources that they need to be able to successfully operate. When we think about infrastructure, when we think about the curricular needs that our kids need, there's so many things that we need to address on a local level, and I'm going to be an ardent supporter of doing everything that we can to ensure that every child across the city has a high quality education.
Is it fair to say that that you're in favor of a healthy balance in the middle, where the charter schools can have a place and the well-funded public schools as well?
I think, as I stated, parents have to make the choice about what works best for their children, but ultimately we have to make sure that we're investing in our public schools, and anything that would siphon off funds from our public schools, I have issue with.
Shifting to the school committee, one of the potential amendments to the city's charter that we could potentially see voters vote on if the commission recommends it is making the school committee elected. Right now, they're mayor appointed. Are you for or against having the school committee become elected?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. As the city undergoes charter review, this is something that we've been grappling with, and that's whether or not we should move from a mayor-appointed school board to an elected school board, or to a hybrid version. I'm currently open to hearing all options and proposals. Admittedly, I think there's a lot of due diligence that we all need to do before we make a decision about this. But I do think that we have to move away from a model that is solely appointed by the mayor. The reason why I say this is because I don't think any mayor should necessarily be the sole arbiter or decider of who is part of the school board. I do believe that voters should have a role in that, and they should select potentially folks who are most qualified and most equipped to deliver on behalf of the children and families of our city. So with that being said, a hybrid election could be a potential model with an appointed model, and that could also lead to some potential conversations about a full out election model, which could also work. However, if there is a full out election model, I would not necessarily be in support of an at-large structure. And I say that for equity reasons. The East Side is significantly more affluent than other areas of the city, and as a result, they could flood an election with fundraising dollars that perhaps aren't necessarily accessible to other folks who are running in different parts of the city, thereby creating barriers to entry for anyone who's truly passionate about changing the state of our public schools. So I think we have to be really thoughtful and intentional about this, but I'm open to the discussion.
Shifting gears for a moment, you have an extensive campaign platform pertaining to issues facing your ward. One of the pledges you have is that you will fight for environmental justice. I know recently the climate justice plan has been implemented, and now there's talks amongst several council candidates of bringing in a citywide Green New Deal similar to Boston's. Your ward also contains green spaces like Indian Point Park and the Fox Point Community Garden that are essential to the city. Can you explain a little more about how you plan to accomplish the goal of achieving environmental justice on the city council?
Absolutely. I think we've got a historic opportunity next term to address some of the issues related to climate in our city. This is a big issue. As you mentioned, the City of Providence's Office of Sustainability released a climate justice plan, and that's a very, very important document and framework for some of the work that we need to continue to do. One of the pitfalls, I would say, of the climate justice plan is those plans haven't been codified into local law. So we need to figure out how we're going to translate those plans into action and into reality. And that takes a legislative process. But I know the council is working on that. And I know there are members of the council who are very supportive of the climate justice plan, including myself. I think the climate justice plan is a very, very important framework moving forward. In that plan, they discovered that 2.5 million metric tons of greenhouse gases collectively are emitted in the city, and the 13.9 per capita emissions rating exceeds that of New York City. Even though it's lower than some other large metropolitan areas. So this is a huge issue for us. And when we think about the Port of Providence, for example, and the asthma rates and the communities there, particularly communities of color that are disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis, we have to do something, and we can't wait. We have to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to push for climate justice policies across our city that advocate for the families of our communities. And carbon pollution has always and continues to affect people of color, low income frontline communities. When we think about, again, the Port of Providence, places near highways, when you mentioned India Point Park, that's right near a highway, which is right next to Vartan Gregorian, which is also next to a highway. And also some of these industrial areas that we have across our city that contribute to some of the health problems that we're seeing. So we need to do everything that we can to get to a just and more equitable future. And that means addressing climate head on. And my hope is that we can attain carbon neutrality by the year 2040, which is in line with some of the tenets of the Green New Deal. And it's all interconnected. When we think about health, housing, and our natural environment, they are interlinked, they are interwoven, and we have to do everything that we can to make sure that the most vulnerable communities in our city, but also everyone in our city, has access to clean air, clean water, and clean food. And that is my charge on the city council, and I look forward to working with my colleagues on that.
It sounds like you are in favor of the city level Green New Deal. I just want to clarify, would you vote in favor of that ordinance if it were introduced?
Well, there's nothing that is proposed as far as a city level Green New Deal. There is no ordinance that is coined this, city level Green New Deal. But there are lots of tenets in the Green New Deal that I very much support. And I think we have to do everything that we can to address climate in our city. And so that is what I intend to do moving forward. We've got a lot of great work that's going to be coming out. So my question to that is stay tuned, and we're looking forward to all the great things that we're going to do to address some of the climate issues that we experience as a city.
You're also big on supporting small businesses. Providence has a plethora of small businesses that contribute to our local economy and are vital to the city's economic growth. The pandemic has hit small businesses hard, especially in the city of Providence. This is sort of a two-part question and maybe a little bit loaded, so feel free to elaborate. What could be done to help small businesses that have been affected by this pandemic in Providence?
Sure. Well, I just want to start by saying small businesses are the backbone of our economy. Specifically in Ward 1, I think about us as the economic engine, not only for the city, but also for the state. In representing downtown, we've seen a lot of turnover with commercial retail. And so that's something that we're keeping a close eye on when we think about our tourism, hospitality industries. We have to do so much to make sure that they get back to where they were pre-pandemic. And so what that means is, we're partnering with the state. Commerce has a lot of initiatives that they are working on. And I want to thank the Commerce Secretary for all of his important work to get our economy back and up and running. But with the ARPA funds, for example, that we have both at the city and the state level, we have to do everything that we can to support some of our small businesses. Here on a local level, we have a grant in which we're essentially providing 2,700 small businesses with some relief. There's a lot more support at the state level, and that is going to help some of the businesses that have been impacted and largely affected by COVID. hopefully get back on their feet and have some kind of semblance of normalcy. But as things open up, we remain optimistic. But we again have to do everything that we can to continue to support our local businesses, to make sure that we're shopping, we're eating locally. When I think about our ward, I think about Ives Street and all the great restaurants there: PVD Donuts, Tallulah's, Aleppo Sweets, Cow Cow, Chomp, like no other. When I think about Wayland Square, I think about so many great places, Diego's, L'Artisan. I mean, downtown, there's so much that we offer in the city of Providence. And my encouragement to everyone would be, let's do our part in supporting our local businesses, and we also have a lot in store for that. One of the other things I would say is we have to get creative about how we support our local businesses, and I think the pandemic actually offered an opportunity for us to do that when we were thinking about permitting and outdoor dining. But it's everything from streetscape to planters to making sure that we have proper lighting so people feel comfortable eating out and enjoying a night out on the town. And again, let's continue to support our local businesses because they are the backbone of our economy and they are what keeps our city afloat. So I just want to thank all of our local businesses for weathering the storm, and we look forward to helping them as we continue to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Moving on to public safety, this is up there, probably the #1 top issue that everyone is focusing on when it comes to politics in Providence, especially in 2022. There are quite a few subtopics to this issue. So starting off with the calls to reimagine public safety. This is often talking about ideas like taking some form of money either out of the police budget or another area and funding ideas like a social worker responding to an addiction or mental health crisis, or things along those natures, job programs for youth, things along those lines. Are you in favor of the idea of reimagine public safety with those proposals?
We've supported that. Absolutely. I mean, we have to think about ways of decriminalizing mental health and behavioral mental health and substance abuse and behavioral health issues. And this is something that is incredibly important as it relates to public health. So public health and public safety are very much intertwined. And I would venture to say that there are many people who are learning about this issue who largely agree, including members of the police department. We have to make sure that our police department is out there focused on addressing issues of violent crime. And quite frankly, if they're alleviated from the burden or the pressure of trying to address all of those issues, in addition to the tough job of fighting violent crime in the city, it's just another weight on their shoulders. And so I think it actually makes public health and public safety very much, it improves what we're doing in that arena. And so we just have to continue that charge. But a simple value undermines my plan for public safety. I think Providence has to be a city where everyone, regardless of who they are, feel safe, whether they're in their home, their neighborhood, walking down the street. And everyone in Providence deserves to live in a safe environment, regardless of their race, gender, class, zip code, or level of ability. And I would say also simultaneously that one shooting or one murder in our city is one too many. Violence and crime have absolutely no place in our city. And so we have to take a very strategic approach at addressing all of those issues. And we also have to focus on building trust and strengthening the relationship between the community and law enforcement. And I think that also means investing in opportunities for our youth. It means strengthening the relationship with our police department and ensuring that we have a Providence that is safe and secure for all residents.
Toward the end, it kind of sounds like, is it fair to say that you're in favor of community policing too? It kind of sounded like that toward the end of the answer, like strengthening the relationship between the city and the police officers.
Absolutely, and enhancing the communication with the police department and the members of the community that they serve. It's critically important that there's a two-way street. It's also critically important that the folks who are out in neighborhoods, whether they're walking the beat or whether they're on bicycles or whether they're just popping into a local coffee shop, that they know who those people are. They know the fabric of the community, because that makes for a much more robust community policing relationship, and that allows us to look out for each other. So anything that's going to strengthen the bonds of our community and make sure that everyone feels safe, I think we have to be supportive of that.
A lot of the debate when talking about public safety and those wraparound services like the youth job programs and social workers responding to situations that police officers shouldn't be, a lot of the debate starts to go around where is that money going to come from. There are calls for it to come from the police budget. Other calls, like say for example, mayoral candidate Brett Smiley, he's talking about expanding the pie, like getting revenue from other areas. Where would you like to, where should, in your opinion, where should that money come from when funding those programs to reimagine public safety?
I think that's a very good question. I think we have to look at it all, right? I think we have to be willing to have discourse and dialogue about this issue. I think what isn't necessarily helpful sometimes is when we're out sort of demonizing our police department or making sort of rash comments. I think we have to make sure that we're being really thoughtful and methodical about this. And ultimately, again, our vision is to ensure that public safety respects the dignity of every individual, that regardless of their race, their ethnicity, their religion, their economic status or physical status, they feel safe. And also people of color, particularly our, BIPOC community, Black, Brown, Asian, Indigenous peoples and immigrants in our community feel safe. And they also feel like they can access the government's public safety functions at the same level as those in the most privileged neighborhoods. So that requires developing a public safety system that is very attuned to what our residents need, and one that ultimately is going to promote health and well-being and stops and interrupts violence and prevents crime and ensures that we are being accountable to the community that we serve.
And then comes the conversations of how many police officers should be hired. This is another, it's like an umbrella with it's like a multi-layered issue. So with the issue of how many police officers should be hired, the number I heard that I believe it was Chief Clements or Stephen Perry who said this, that there needs to be 450 officers on the force. Do you have a specific number of police officers you think that should be hired for the city?
I'm not going to mention a specific number. I think a lot of people would certainly defer to the chief on that issue. I think that's something that we're continually engaging in conversations about. But ultimately, what we need to do simultaneously is make sure that we're investing in uh, the economic security of our residents. We're strengthening the bond that we have with public safety. We have a holistic approach, and we're working with both the police department, but also the community to figure out what that is. And so that's going to require robust conversations, and we're going to continue those conversations, especially as we engage in our budget discussions. And it's an important consideration that everyone should be weighing in on.
Do you believe there should at least be more hired than the current number?
I mean, what I've heard from members in the community is that in my ward in particular, I think I'm going to be honest with you about the range of opinions on this. I mean, we hear from so many people about their opinions on this specific issue. My approaches are very data driven, so I listen to all of my constituents. And I think there is a very valid and important consideration for those who say we need less, for those who say we need more. At this time, I think this is a conversation that we need to continue to have, and I look forward to having that with the constituents in my ward and the constituents across the city.
Aside from public safety, the number two issue in the city is the pension system. It concerns residents and elected officials in the city because it's like a ticking time bomb. If it gets worse, it could lead to potential bankruptcy of the city if it really gets bad. There are a number of solutions being offered and different approaches, like the bond proposal, some of the bills actually that you would showcase your support for a few days ago at the State House, like that would tax the private colleges, or that would allow the city to tax private colleges, I should say. I know it's not like a silver bullet, so I don't expect you just to list one, but what solutions do you favor to help try to aid the issue of the pension system?
I think what the mayor has proposed is the best option that we have at this time. So as you mentioned, we've got a $1.2 billion unfunded pension liability in the city. It cuts into our ability to deliver effective city services. It's something that we really need to address. And at this time, what the mayor is proposing, the bond that is going to be voted on by voters is the best of the available options at the moment. There is risk involved, so there's no question that we have to be very thoughtful about it. We have to ensure that there are guardrails in place. We know that POBs have a checkered history. They rely on the assumption that when invested wisely, the bond proceeds will be able to achieve a greater rate of return than the interest rate owned over the term of the bonds. But it does involve investment risk. And so that means that we're going to be subject to market uncertainty and volatility. They're speculative, and it leaves us vulnerable to potential loss in the market. But simultaneously, we can't do anything. And so this is the best option that we have available. If people have other alternative models or alternative options, we will love to hear what those thoughts are. But there has been a lot of due diligence that has been done on this particular issue, up and down. We've explored every single option. We are not insolvent as a city, so we can't file for bankruptcy. Oftentimes people will, offer ideas that in fact we have already thought of. And right now at this given moment in time, this is the best option. And so I encourage people to learn more about this issue, but to also vote in support of this bond on June 7th.
Shifting gears to what things could look like in January 2023, one of the guarantees is that there will be a new city council president. The current council president, John Goncalves of Ward 7, is term limited. Whenever I ask the council candidates who they want to support for council president, I usually don't get a specific name. However, they talk of the characteristics to describe, and occasionally they'll say two councilors. One of them that I've heard at least once or twice is your name. Do you plan to run for council president in January?
Well, thank you very much for that question, but I think it's far too early to speculate about council president right now. I'm focused on doing the work for the people of Ward 1 in the city of Providence. I care deeply about the city. I would certainly be honored, but I think it's early to speculate. I do, however, have other folks in mind that I would support for that role, quite frankly. And ultimately, I look forward to being a team player and helping other great legislators and policy wonks like myself be able to successfully pass important legislation to move our city forward.
Have you ruled out that possibility of running for the position?
I want to be a team player, and I want to make sure that we get good policy passed on the Providence City Council, and I look forward to doing that hopefully during my next term.
Another guarantee is that there will also be a new mayor. The primary is it's basically the de facto mayoral election because there's the only candidates of the four Democrats running: Michael Solomon, Councilwoman LaFortune, Gonzalo Cuervo, and Brett Smiley. Out of those four candidates, are you planning to throw your support behind any of them before the primary?
That's a very, very good question. We are going to definitely be weighing in as the time is right for us. But so stay tuned. But I think each of the candidates has extraordinary experience and qualities, and we look forward to engaging in that race when the time is right.
My final question is a non-political topic, and it's one I ask everybody on the show to keep tradition. It's, in your opinion, what do you think Rhode Island is best known for?
Oh, geez, this is a tough question. I would say Rhode Island is known for beaches. Can I answer this with more than one thing?
Absolutely, yeah. People have
Oh,
done more than
okay.
one. There's no rules.
Oh, okay, great. All right. Calamari, coffee milk, Family Guy. I would also say the world's largest bug on Providence's New England pest control off the highway. And I would also say now the horrible transition to a brand new license plate that virtually looks the same as our last license plate. But generally speaking, I would say Rhode Island should be best known for the best city in the world, and that's the capital city, the city of Providence.
I like that you mentioned the Family Guy, the coffee milk, and especially the big blue bug. Those don't get mentioned often, and I always make a joke that I have like a bingo card of like which ones are going to be said. So I appreciate that you brought out the Family Guy one, especially Councilman and the big blue bug, and also Providence, because Providence is important to the state, and it really does have the potential to be a world-class city. Councilman Goncalves, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure of mine to have you on.
Thank you so much, Ray, for having me. Thanks for all that you're doing.
Thank you. And thanks for watching this episode of Ray-ality TV. If you want to see future episodes as soon as they're posted on this channel, please click both the subscribe button down below and the post notification bell icon to the right of it. I'm Raymond Bakari, and I'll see you on the next episode.